Lieutenant Brody Young is a park ranger with the Law Enforcement Division of the Utah Department of Natural Resources and a part-time motivational speaker who helps others unlock their capacity to be resilient. As a whitewater river guide and self-proclaimed hippie before attending the academy, Ranger Young was no stranger to the risks associated with being alone in the outback. But nothing prepared him for the events of November 19, 2010. On that day, he was ambushed by an assailant, shot 9 times, and left to die in a remote area far from backup or medical support. However, in that moment, he learned something about himself, his will to live, the importance of family and belief, the value of his training, and personal resilience. He is back on the job today, doing what he loves. Here is his story.
Well, good day. My name's Ranger Brody Young. I'm currently a lieutenant for Utah State Parks and Recreation. I live in Moab, Utah, and have done so full-time since 2006, part-time since 1999. Previous to becoming a ranger, I was a professional river guide, which involved taking people, carrying passengers for hire, down some pretty intense whitewater. It was a great experience. It got me into being a ranger. Moab is a wonderful place to live. It's surrounded by red rock and the Colorado River, of course, and just a lot of open public land. Desert, we're a high desert, about 4,000 feet in elevation. My supervisor and I, what we did at the beginning of the shift was we split up. He went south of town, I went north of town. And we'd go and scout out these potential party spots, and then we would come back together, jump in one vehicle, and go make the contact. Well, as we separated and went our different ways, I was hitting some trailheads on my way out to what I thought would be some party spots where kids would be at. The first trailhead I went to was Poison Spider Mesa Trailhead. It's one of the more difficult trails in Moab. My shift started about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. This is November 19th, so the sun has set. It's a warm night. It's kind of a warm before the storm. So I hit this trailhead, and there was one lone car in the back of the parking lot. And I thought I would pull up and write the plate down, actually see if anyone was in the vehicle, and then come check on it later on my way back into town. Well, as I went to approach the vehicle, there was a plate. It was a Utah plate. I wrote the plate down and walked around to the driver's side of the vehicle. And as I came up to the back passenger seat, I noticed there was a lump in the back seat. And I thought, oh, someone is sleeping in the car. And so I knocked on the window several times. Finally, this gentleman woke up. And he opened the door, and I told him who I was. I'm Ranger Brody Young, and I asked if he was okay, and said he was. And then we talked about real calm, casual conversation that it wasn't okay to camp here, but we talked about other places he could go and camp. And then I asked for some ID. The name he gave me was Michael Orr, which, if you don't recognize it, it's from a character in the movie Blindside. Little did I know I was about to get blindsided. So I wrote this name down, Michael Orr, and date of birth, and then I asked him to wait there. So I left him and was gradually walking back to my vehicle, looking back a few times just to see or hear of any movement. As I was about to get in my truck, turn to get in, that's when the shots rang out. So I'm left-handed, I'm left-hand dominant, and the first round hit me in my humerus. It just shattered my arm. I immediately knew it, and I even yelled out, "Oh, I've been shot," and turned away because of the pain was pretty excruciating. As I turned away and looked over my right shoulder, I could just see muzzle flash and him advancing on me, one round after the other. Well, I believe during that time, I sustained a lot of damage. Actually was hit 9 times with a .40 caliber handgun. It was kind of a hollow point, with a plastic tip on it, made to cause real damage. 3 to the back. I was wearing a resistant vest, which I wear religiously. You wear the uniform, you wear the vest. 3 of those rounds hit my back. One of them, unfortunately, penetrated through the vest and into my vertebrae. I believe that's when I fell to the ground. And it It was literally me on the ground and him standing over me almost and firing round after round. I'd sustained some significant damage, although all the pain was really focused in my arm. Well, he stopped shooting, and I was presented with this moment, a choice really. It was you can either lie down and die or get up and fight. And I did not want to die, and so what do? What does training teach you to do? I went up and went for cover, went to the back of my truck, and he retreated to the front of my truck, and we began playing this cat and mouse game around my truck. In the meantime, my left arm is not working. It is just loose and lifeless. And I'm trying to figure out why my left arm won't work. And then I actually said, "You idiot, use your other hand. You've trained to do this." And so I cross-drew, pulled out my weapon, began to get my bearings. Now I see him over there about where you are in the camera view. He's standing in front of my truck door, and I see him through the windows of my truck. And I began firing through my truck, through everything I knew that the bullet would go through. I had a really unique conversation the summer before. I was on a river trip. So part of my title is River Ranger, and we were patrolling the rivers. And we're laying in the sand, and my chief was there, and we're talking about the caliber of bullet and what it'll go through and what it won't. And I knew it would go through everything but the engine block. But that conversation was coming into my mind, and so I knew my bullet would reach through and be able to hit the person who was assaulting me. So I was counting my rounds as I was shooting the rounds, because I knew my reload was going to be kind of unique. Not one you practice every day, but one that I had practiced. So I got up to the 13th, 14th, 15th round. I released the first magazine. I put the gun between my legs and grabbed my spare magazine, tried to put it in, and unfortunately dropped the first mag, but we carried two for a good reason. So I grabbed the second magazine, I put it into the handle of my gun, I get a real firm grip in it, and then I used my bumper and the rear sights to chamber around. And he was still in the same place, so I fired more rounds in his direction. At this point, I think maybe he was kind of freaked out, but he retreated and stood in front of his car, and I moved up to my right rearview mirror. And at this point, I began to, I believe, lose adrenaline. I just began to go unconscious, and as I was going unconscious, I was firing more rounds and kind of retreating to the back of my truck. I ended up about here behind the truck. I'd laid down, I'd fired several more rounds down the passenger or the driver's side of my truck. There were 3 rounds in my right rear tire. There was one in the bumper. There was one in the door. I don't remember shooting these rounds, but as I fired, I went unconscious, and I think at that point he thought I had died. I'm on my back on the ground. I'm away from my truck. It's really hard to move. I felt like someone had poured concrete on me. I just couldn't move. I had no energy or strength left to do so. And then a really remarkable thing happened. In my mind, I began to see pictures of my family. So I had a wife, 3 kids who were very young at the time, ages 6, 3, and 9 months, and seeing their faces and wanting to be with them again, to grow old, to be a part of this little family we'd created. I realized the only way I'm going to make it through this is if I get to that truck radio, because I hadn't called out. I didn't let dispatch know that I was there at that trailhead. It's a canyon. It's in a canyon with a river, Colorado River, at the bottom of it, and it's very hard to get out on a radio. But as I got to the truck door and I'm laying on the ground, my truck's door is open. I've always felt and had strong premonition to always leave this door open when I was on any contact with anyone. Fortunately, the radio was low, and I was able to crawl over, reach for the radio, and call out. Now, we're always taught to not act like a lunatic on the radio, right? So I thought about what I was going to say, and I knew I had to be really calm about it. So when I got my wits, I said, "Price 2 Alpha 6 9. I'm at Poison Spider Mesa Trailhead. I've been shot. Please hurry. And then I laid the mic down on the floor, gun in hand. I kind of laid it on the floorboard. And at that point, I laid down onto my back about right here. And honestly, I didn't know what to do after that. I'd never taught myself or gone through the thought process or trained for taking care of my wounds. But here's what I did do. I'd read some research on breathing and how you can slow your vitals down by controlling your breathing. And I knew that if I could breathe from one breath to the next, I was going to make it. So that's what I did. I controlled my vitals, I slowed them down, and breathing. It actually gave me the time for people to respond and come to me. The first voice I heard on the radio was my supervisor, and that was heaven sent. And then I heard some other voices, familiar voices of EMTs and first responders who were coming to my aid, and I was so relieved to hear their voices. So 8 to 10 minutes later, paramedics and stuff come to me, and I'm getting questions from the deputies about who shot me and what did he look like, where he went. I've got EMTs and paramedics starting to cut off all my clothes. And I get put into the ambulance, and I'm able to describe what he looks like, what he was wearing, where he could possibly be going, and then I get rushed to the hospital. As I'm going to the hospital, my wife gets a call from another supervisor of mine who finally spat out the news that I'd been shot and that it didn't look good and that I needed to go to the hospital right now. So Wendy jumps in the car and she drives to the hospital. If you can imagine your spouse and what she's thinking, this is perhaps a situation that hopefully, or a conversation you've had with your spouse or a significant other, that this could happen. And Wendy, a really remarkable thing took place. During her drive or her route to the hospital, she was told specifically in her heart and in her mind that Brody's going to be okay, he's going to live. So when she showed up to the hospital, she was really calm and just composed. And there's a lot of chaos and people are running around, and the helicopter's landing out of Colorado, Grand Junction area, St. Mary's Hospital. Just before they put me on the helicopter, Wendy came up and whispers in my ear and says, "Hey, Brody, you're finally going to get that helicopter ride that you always wanted." And I didn't laugh or respond, but it's great to hear her voice. Just after that, I was put in an induced coma and shipped off in a helicopter. Doctors at the on-site there thought I had the look like I wasn't going to make it. For some reason, mid-flight, I stabilized and arrived in Grand Junction, and then went into surgery. And honestly, I don't remember much, but I woke up a month later. But I had sustained damage to my heart, small intestine, colon, right kidney, liver, diaphragm, left lung, spine, pelvis, left humerus, left triceps muscle, right forearm, right femoral nerves, and right hip flexor. The damage was really extensive, and there was a lot of recovery involved. So it did take some time. From waking up in the hospital, I spent honestly 2 more weeks there. I was supposed to spend 2 months or more, but I just began to recover so quickly. Well, Christmas Eve rolled around, and as you know, on Christmas Eve, right, no one's around. It's all interns and just medical staff with maybe little experience. They thought it'd be a great idea to get me cleared and to send me home Christmas Eve, which was a real blessing, but it was a real shock to my family. And trying to get medications and stuff on Christmas Eve was about the hardest thing we've done. I sat in a Walgreens parking lot for like 4 hours trying to get home. But I got to go home and spend Christmas with my family and my 3 kids. So you may be wondering what happened to the person who assaulted me that night. His name is Lance Leroy Ariano. He was 40 at the time. And he'd come down to the area to get away from home. And I just happened to meet him on a night where he had made a choice that led up to a point where if you can get into someone's mind where they would think that it was okay to try and take someone else's life. After he shot me and I passed out, he left and he went downriver. He went away from Moab, away from civilization, out towards Canyonlands National Park, out to where really you go to disappear. From those who responded that night and the next morning who followed or tracked him to this location, it looked like he was setting up to ambush more officers, but for some reason before daylight, he left all of his gear and his supplies and disappeared from that point. And then it turned into a search, and the search went on for 5 years. A reward was put out, a $30,000 reward. Well, 5 years later, it's about Christmas time, and they find this green bag just sitting out on the red rock, kind of just really sticking out. And they thought it was odd and went and opened the bag and found a weapon that matched the description of the weapon he shot me with and some other items. And then they looked a little bit up further and saw a rib bone, a white rib bone sitting out, just stood out next to the red rock. Now, I don't wish death on anyone. And honestly, I wish he was still alive for his sake and his family's. But what happened has happened, and it really brought closure. It was just such a relief to get that news. 9 months before this incident, I had a strong impression to get healthy, to get fit consistently. Cardio, and so it was the sit-ups, push-ups, and the run, and eating healthy. I don't smoke, and I don't drink alcohol, and do those things. I just try and eat healthy, but I really had the impression to get fit and to stay fit. My first 3 days in the hospital, my heart rate was going 180 a minute for 3 days straight. We tried medications to slow it down and whatnot. That's equivalent to sprinting a marathon for 3 days straight. I was just in really good shape, and my heart was able to sustain itself and not fail. It's really heaven sent, those premonitions. If you've ever felt like doing something for no reason and it makes sense and it feels good here and here, maybe we should listen to those premonitions. But unfortunately, in this moment, I listened to that and really helped preserve my life. And this quote is from George Lewis. It says, "If people don't like you, that's okay. They can't whip you. But if they whip you, they can't kill you. But if they do kill you, they can't eat you. But if they eat you, you don't have to taste good." Now, this is the epitome of never giving up, and death was never an option for me. I'd never trained that death was an option. It was live to train and train to live. Now, so much more good came out of this than such a violent thing. It really reaffirmed our faith in society. We had people as far as South Africa reach out to us and just show their concern, and we had so much help. I'm back full-time, full duty. My first round of physical therapy was great, but I stopped doing the things they asked me to do, and I ended up back in physical therapy. I still have to stretch a lot. I still have to exercise a lot. If I get complacent, my body kind of deteriorates. And so if you'd like to hear more about my story and recovery and resilience, the idea of never giving up, please, I go around the country and occasionally speak and share my story, but rangerbrodyyoung.com will get you to me eventually. Please reach out. I'm excited to share the story and to share some tactics and what helped me get through a really tough situation.